welcome on this Thursday evening to um, the trauma care webinar. We've had a little break. There's been a lot of changes within trauma care, changes of staff, changes of structure, and we are emerging stronger. Um, sorry we had to pause the webinar series briefly, but we've got it back on track now, and I'll introduce Rusty properly in a bit. I'd like to thank Slater and Gordon, who are key sponsors of trauma care and supporting us as we go through the changes that we're going through. We do have a disclaimer that this learning has taken place. The learning that's taken place during this webinar should not be solely relied upon to inform practice, or indeed allow practice outside your individual scope of qualifications and practice. So, the Trauma Care Conference, the annual conference, the international conference at Yarnfield, is going to take place from March the 9th to the 12th next year. Tickets and details will be out shortly. They're certainly imminent. Please do save that date, and the conference itself will be as superb as it always is, because we are very lucky in having amazing speakers who and organisers of streams to come and support us every single year. Become a trauma care member. A number of reasons for this. One, you get a discounted membership to conferences. Two, you get access to all of the previous webinars. There is access to the trauma journal, and there are other little perks that we will slowly bring online as time goes by. So I'm just going to introduce Rusty to you. Our speaker knows what it means to lead when the stakes are high. For over 3 decades, Rusty Carroll has served in both the military and the health sector environments where leadership isn't theoretical, it's lived. He's led through crisis, held command when pressure was at its peak, and seen firsthand how systems and people respond when the line between order and chaos thins. But like many who've carried that weight, Rusty's greatest challenge came after the uniform. He faced PTSD, a quieter, more persistent kind of battle. That experience became the turning point in his journey, the moment when the soldier became the seeker. Rusty found his guide in education, studying leadership, psychology, and human performance to rebuild understanding from the inside out. And he discovered his special weapon through 5 years of psychotherapy, learning that courage isn't just about holding your ground, but about holding your heart open. Through those experiences, he came to see the real enemy of leadership not as failure or fear, but complacency. That slow drift toward good enough, where meaning and accountability quietly fade. Today, Rusty's mission is to help leaders, especially those who think differently, rediscover courage, clarity, and rhythm. His work blends lived experience, education, and empathy to help organisations move beyond compliance and into true change. Please welcome Rusty Carroll, a leader who's walked through command, challenge, and change, and now helps others become just a little bit braver. Thank you, Rusty.
Okay, so we're going to start with just a good evening from me and welcome. Thank you very much indeed. So what we're going to start is we're going to start talking about the difference between compliance, obligation, and protection. So compliance isn't just about obligation. Compliance with, especially Martyn's Law, because Martyn's Law was one of the headlines within our title today, is about protection, and it's a protection for everybody. It's not paperwork, it's not policy. Protection is what we practice again and again until it becomes who we are. Rhythm isn't just rules. Preparedness isn't just rule following, it's rhythm keeping, tiny, repeatable actions, and we'll come back to the importance of repetition later on, that keeps people safe. Rules can be read, but rhythm must be lived. Change is possible, growth is necessary. Every time we adapt, we strengthen. Every time we learn, we protect more wisely. Preparedness isn't a finish line, it's a journey that never stands still. We can always get better, we just have to choose to move. So the duty to protect. Martyn's Law, also known as the Protect Duty, is a UK legislation designed to keep people safe in public places. It asks every organisation to think ahead, to understand its risks, to prepare for its plans, and to train its people. It isn't about fear, it's about care, proportionate, practical, human. Of course, the name Martyn, Martyn's Law is after Martyn Het, was one of the 22 people killed in the Manchester Arena attack. His mother, Figan Murray, turned her grief into purpose, campaigning so others might be protected. This law is her and his legacy, a reminder that protection is personal. Every plan, every drill, every conversation about readiness is an act of care. So what does Martyn's Law actually say? Martyn's Law says we need to assess, we need to prepare, and we need to train. These three habits turn law into culture. So let's expand a little bit. Assess. We need to know your environment and its vulnerabilities. So if you're doing an event medicine cover, you need to know the location that you're at, and it might be a pop-up venue in a field, in a festival. It might be a Premiership football club, of which we have a few here in Manchester, and they're all tier one targets. Because here in Manchester, we don't talk about if the next major incident, we talk about when the next major incident, and we had one just last week. Prepare. We're going to need to create clear roles and plans that fit into your context. We're going to create clear roles and plans that fit your context. And we're going to train. You need to repeat until calm feels natural. And I can't emphasize this enough, is this idea of repetition in training. As adult learners, we should all embrace the fact that when we do something once, we're not going to be able to repeat it. And I know the medical aphorism, see one, do one, teach one, but actually that means you've done three for a start. So that kind of leans into this, even though there's the idea is you actually only do one before you're able to teach it. But repetition builds rhythm, rhythm builds competence, competence builds calm. And that's where we need to be. So we're not going to file preparedness, we're going to feel it. We're going to make rhythm, not ritual. Historically, if you've done any form of major incident training, if you've been to exercises, if you've done things like the MIMS and the HMIMS course for the hospital folks amongst us, what you've probably been told is that there is a major incident plan that is triggered at the point where a major incident is declared. And that's a very digital on or off approach, yes or no approach to major incidents. And what we're starting to see now is that, in fact, a more nuanced approach is what's ideal. So in a nuanced approach, we're going to have a set of tools that we will be able to deploy for different types of event. For example, here in the Northwest Ambulance Service now use the ethane report, which is the methane report, which I'm sure nearly everyone on the call has heard about. It's the thing that you communicate upwards that there has been a major incident declared. The M of methane is declaring the major incident. If you take the M out of that communication, then you have a very, very effective way of communicating when you've got a significant incident. And so both the people at the front line who are making the decision and making the communication, and importantly, the people at the other end of that conversation in control who are hearing the ethane report, that process, that communication tool is now being practiced on a daily basis and through this iterative use. And it means that on the day of days when someone declares a methane, people know what order the information is going to come in, what to expect, what information is excluded from a methane. So my question for you and my challenge for you is, do you prepare for any event or for all the wrong ones? Readiness isn't prediction, it's a rhythm under pressure. And I want you to think about your response, your individual personal response in your role, be you a helimed critical care paramedic, hi Lucy, or serving in the military. And I'm guessing some of those people in those hot places are serving. Thank you for your service. Whether you're a frontline band 4, band 5, band 6 ambulance person, police, fire, a intensive care intensivist that's on a helimed or in the hospital, what do you do, and what tools are you using and when? Because the risk is that you go static and you stop, because every system stalls somewhere. We can all see that in our daily life now. Every system that stalls, at some point you reach creaking, and then you hit breaking points. And there's all of the learning analogies about stretch zones and then breaking points and all those. They apply at system level, they apply at individual level, they apply at team level. And it's in these points, in these freezing points, is where risk hides. There's a bit of a fallacy about you rise to the occasion. And whilst a little bit of stress and pressure will get you out of bed in the day, will get you to stand up and get you going, a small amount of stress improves your performance. And by the way, hearing that often enough, hearing that fact that the right amount of stress improves your performance, actually improves your performance and increases the amount of stress that you can tolerate. However, we all have a limit as to how much stress we can tolerate. And at that point, we sink to the level of our training and experience. And if we've only been modeled and if we've only ever done mediocre practice, we are going to sink back into that level. We're going to go back to that. And this is something very, very important to understand. There's a physiological imperative here. When we've studied healthcare, pre-registration training, biology at GCSE or A level, you'll at some point will have heard the phrase fight or flight. Well, for years and years and years, it was told that the adrenal system was the fight or flight system. You're either going to fight, stand in place and fight, or you're going to run away. You're going to flee from the quote unquote saber-toothed tiger, although sadly humans and saber-toothed tiger were never on the planet at the same time. So that analogy doesn't work quite as well as we want it to. But the fundamental thing is there is a third F, and it's freeze. And freezing is actually much more common than we would like to think, both especially in the bystanders, but also amongst our colleagues and peers. And we all do it. And even if we only freeze momentarily and then we step up, it's a perfectly normal part of the physiology. So how do we go about it? Because if we don't want to sink to our level of practice, we need to up our tempo, up our rhythm, and it's rhythm that raises the floor. So what I want to introduce you to is this as a model of 6 steps which can be used individually, that can be used in any combination, but ideally all 6 steps can be used, and it's the Braver model. And the first thing that we're going to suggest that you do at any point, so this is both professional, personal, in a major incident, significant incident, or just tripping up going through a front door, it doesn't matter. The first thing I'm going to suggest you do is breathe. Now, many people on the call will understand, they'll have read Kahneman's work about system 1, system 2 thinking, about that instinctual, fast response, that type 1, that system 1 thinking. And then there's the system 2, where you step back and you have a think and you consider and you make a more considered cognitive response. Well, what I'm going to suggest is that your instincts are not always going to be reliable. And what you need to do is, when faced with the opportunity to react with instinct, is to take a breath. Just breathe. Everything begins with a breath. Slow yours, and you will slow down the whole room. Your breath sets the tempo. And then ideally what we're going to do is we're going to take the gift of that breath and we're going to create a slightly longer pause, a rest. A rest isn't weakness, it's awareness. It's a pause before the pivot. It keeps your decisions clean. And in this is where we are detaching slightly from the emotion of the situation. We are getting our instinct out of the way, and we are progressing with a cognitive, considered approach. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to ask. We are one person now. If you're solo responding, there's no one to ask, then just ask yourself. But very, very rarely or very, very quickly, you will be in a situation, you won't be in that situation on your own. You will have other people around you. And at this point, we need to be asking. We need to ask rather than assume, because our perspective, especially when we're generalized, is at least dodgy, if not fully compromised. So get other people's perspective. What has other people seen? There's a classic story from the arena where a Northwest Ambulance Service officer liaised with, I think, 4 or 5 or possibly 6 crews. I can't remember the exact number. And they said, right, you crews, grab your response bags and follow me. And they were going to the CCS. And at the point where they got to the CCS, the officer turned around and there was only 2 crews still with him, because a number of the other crews had seen things that they felt needed immediate attention. So there's always going to be people that see things differently to you. The only way you're going to get that perspective, the only way you're going to gain their intelligence and make better considered decisions, is to start asking questions. And then, of course, you need to listen to the answers. because the superpower in answering questions is silence. And the longer you hold your silence for, the more information you will get. And then what we're going to do when we hear those answers, we're going to do that deep listening. We're actually going to value what we hear. The perspective might be different. In fact, the more different the perspective is to ours, we need to challenge whether or not it's even more valuable than our own, because it's in those differences that we get a truly, truly strong response. People see things differently. People will have, simply because they've walked through the same place at a slightly different time, they will have seen different things to you. They will have heard different things. The situation where they've come from will be different from when you were there. So always, always ask, and then value those answers and value those differences. And then once you've made your decision, what you're then going to do is you're then going to come up with some form of plan. You're going to share that plan. And when you share that plan, it is absolutely critical that you put some edges on it. You put some boundaries in, because those edges, it's those boundaries that keep people safe. For example, if you were briefing a team to go forwards and doing some triage, you would go, okay, team, here's the two of you. Here's your triage kit. Here's your bag of tourniquets and OP airways or whatever kit they're going forwards with. You are to conduct primary triage, no treatment apart from stop the bleed and opening airways, for no more than 10 minutes, and you come back to and report your findings and report your numbers. And that 10-minute boundary, that 10-minute edge is a place of safety for them. And it's safety in terms of there's only so much triage someone could rationally be asked to do and safely be asked to do. But also there's only so much triage that they can retain the information from. And in order to make sure that the information gets passed correctly, the safe, effective approach is to make sure that gets back briefed. And yes, I know there's technology around there where we're using QR codes and barcodes to scan people and GPS locators, so that as soon as someone's been triaged, it flags up on various computer systems around the various levels of command. But the principle exists that putting edges and barriers in place for people is a place of safety. I'll give you an example outside of the emergency situation. I'm a 36-year Army veteran. I'm still serving in the reserves. My team, I have a team that work for me. If any of my team turn up late to a meeting, to a scheduled meeting, without giving me a little text message to say, hey, I'm really sorry, the dog's just been sick, I'll be 2 minutes late. If someone turns up late to the meeting without the courtesy of letting them know they're going to be late, they will see on the call for the first few minutes of the call the slightly more grumpy version of Rusty than they normally get. They will also know, because it's a safe edge, that predictable edge behavior isn't going to last long and they're not going to get sacked. But it's a completely predictable edge. Another completely predictable edge is if they have a family emergency, I am kicking them out the door. I don't want them here if there's something going on at home. Get rid, sort it all out, and we will pick up whenever you get back. And they know that, and that's safe. And it means that when they pick up the phone and they go, Rusty, I have my child is X, my dog is, my parents, the nursing home, whatever the phrase is, they know that before they even get to the end of the sentence, I'm saying, put your phone down, go home, deal with it. Let me know how you get on. Edges aren't barriers, they're boundaries of trust. Name what's safe and people can move with confidence. Create that safety. And then what we're going to do is we're going to rinse and repeat. We're going to repeat all of those. And we've got a rhythm, we've got a tempo, we've got repeatability, because rhythm is repetition. We're going to drill, we're going to debrief, we're going to do it again until calm becomes instinct. So what I want you to think about is, of those 6 steps, they're all on the screen right now for you. Of those 6 steps, where is it that you freeze? Which one of those is more challenging to you than the others? Because no one's an expert at all of them. No one, including me, has mastered them all. That's a work in progress. Life would be boring otherwise if we'd already mastered everything. So, but we certainly seek and strive for mastery. So how does mastery grow? It grows through rhythm. So where are you getting blocked? Where are you not getting there with that plan? Repetition restores readiness. So where are you slipping up? Where are you not repeating? Where are you not doing the training? I've got a 13-year-old son. He's downstairs screaming at a computer game right now. I can just about hear him. Hopefully you can't. if I ask him to do some homework, I know for a fact if I don't supervise, he's reaching for maths and science. He's not reaching for the subjects he doesn't like. He reaches for the subjects he finds easy. He doesn't need, he's already top of his year of maths. He doesn't need to do any maths homework. What he needs to do is get slightly better at putting words into a sentence, because a pen in his hand is his kryptonite. So use that. So what are you not working on? What are you avoiding? Because is that something that you potentially need to be leaning into? Because culture isn't written; it's rehearsed through actions and debriefs and every breath. And culture is all of those micro behaviors repeating over and over again. And so, what do? We repeat, we loop. This is a slide I've used on many different talks to explain Kolb's learning loop. We do something, you see what the outcome is, you do some form of reflection, you make a change, and you rinse and repeat. You go round and round the loop, and you iterate, and you prove it. For those of you involved in management and leadership and done anything in management and leaders in the NHS, you will have heard of the PDSA cycle. It's exactly the same thing. It's this idea is you're going to do something, you're going to get some feedback, you're going to use that feedback to make some change, and then you're going to implement the change and see how it goes. So the plan is here to get to a point where you are steady enough to steady others, and your presence, your positive presence that you create spreads faster than panic, because both will spread. So I'm going to ask you this question. I want you to call it. I want you to call out what's real for you. Start popping some stuff in the chat. What's real for you? Where's the risk? Where's your rhythm? Where's your responsibility? Call it early and call it clearly, and let's do that right now. Yeah, Braver, Jessup and Braver, they overlap. Yeah, so they are layers. Jessup's the technical, Braver is much more about the how. I mean, the 5 Jessup principles, the first one of which is to stand next to each other, the second one of which is be nice and talk to each other. They're pretty good. They're pretty good principles. Using common communication frames, other than methane, we haven't quite got that one right. And I know I am Arch, but it's not. I'm not a fan of it. I'm not a massive fan of it. It's too complex. So we've got Elseword. Please forgive me if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly. Struggling to ask and to set up edges, struggling to pause to ask. So use the breathing. Use the breathing to pause. Use the breathing to then kick into a rest. And as soon as you're resting, and that means you're quiet and you're sitting still, that's the point to then pose a question. Buy yourself some more time. Buy yourself some more thinking time by asking questions and hearing the answers you get back. Now, that doesn't mean you have to believe or do everything that you hear and are told, but it's information. And how many times in debriefs at major incidents have we heard about inadequate information and inadequate communications? So let's, as a habit, stop that and start addressing that right from the very moment we arrive by listening and communicating, because we've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, and that's, well, I believe it should be more than 2 to 1, but let's aim for 2 to 1 at least as a start in terms of the communication. The irony being, for the last 30 minutes, I've done nothing more than talk. So let's get some more. Fail to breathe. Sarah, I hope you wouldn't fail to breathe for very long, or else some of the other colleagues are going to be jumping up and down in your chest. Hannah, the person I was thinking, talking, conscious. Yes, exactly. So I think what I'm seeing in one of the points there is that different people process things differently, and some people, be they introverts in particular, may process things internally and not be quick to come out. And if that means we're only listening to the extroverts in the first 5 minutes of an incident, we're not getting a balanced picture. Imogen, first year paramedic students, welcome to the profession. Still brand new and not been in a trauma scenario. Don't worry, you'll get plenty of chance. Yeah, breathe. Even if you only remember the B of Braver and do some breathing before you do your whatever protocol it is, your march, your CABCDE, whatever they're training you to do in your trauma scenario, just breathe. Yeah, David, really good point about not getting tunnel vision, stopping and breathing, slowing your heart rate down, actually opening up your vision again. Yeah, Phil, IMArch, it's useful. It has its use, but and it's really really done. It's when it's done well with people that use it a lot, and I've seen Fire do this very very well. It's fantastic. The problem is that not enough people are using it often enough. Go back to that example of the methane and the ethane up here in NWAS land, and everyone's now completely conversant and fairly slick with methane because they're using ethane. And even if they're only using it, they only go to a significant incident once a fortnight, even once a month. It's still more than they were otherwise. No one gave a methane report for years and years and years and years and years. And then one person would declare it. And great. Now, were they slick? Did they get it right? Almost certainly not. Tom's kindly dropping some tools into the chat. We've got a debrief tool. And I know a lot of you will have turned in for stuff relating to Martyn's Law. There's a Martyn's Law checklist, and if you are responsible for event med cover or cover at a stadium or a music festival, remember Martyn's Law kicks in when you have a venue that has 200 people in it, and then the enhanced level of Martyn's Law kicks in at 800 people. I do an awful lot of major incident training in hospitals. And my challenge to most hospitals is whether or not they think Martyn's Law applies in a hospital, and all of them say no, it isn't. I said, do you have more than 800 visitors to this institute, this location on a day? And of course they do. They have more than that outpatients, let alone actual visitors. And they have commercial places like WH Smith, and here in Wythenshawe, we've even got an M&S. The chemist is a commercial chemist. There's a Subway. Are you sure it's not a venue? I think through law, it probably is. And if you want to pick it. So that means that they need to have a major incident plan. Because what if the hospital is the major incident? Well, we had one of those in Manchester last year. And any of you know about Stepping Hill? Stepping Hill had a flood and had to evacuate 2 wards, one of which was the ICU. And at the time, the hospital was at around 110% bed occupancy. So there wasn't any spare space to put anyone either. So hospitals are involved in the major incident. If any of you know the story of the Mumbai attack, and the Mumbai attack, one of the targets of the Mumbai attack was in fact the hospital. But the terrorists changed their mind when they went to the hospital and saw pregnant women and babies, and they turned around and went to the hotel shopping complex where they ended up fighting and mostly dying. As well as the debrief tool, there's the checklist for Martyn's Law, and there's also a checklist for preparedness. They're all I own the copyright for all of those guys, and they are free to use. You can use them and forward them on. It's absolutely not a problem. Share them. They've been developed specifically for use. So preparedness. Preparedness is not just the plan. Preparedness is rhythm. It's repeating, repeating, repeating. It's a constant iteration. The Kolb's learning loop, the going round and round and round. The iterative practice, getting competent. For example, if you're frontline staff, are you competent with a tourniquet? You probably are competent with a tourniquet in a classroom when it's not dark, it isn't raining, you don't have blood on your gloves, and you're not having to lie down because you're in a semi-permissive environment. I train military paramedics to put tourniquets on lying with their face in the dirt where they can't see where the tourniquet is going, and they're having to literally do it above their heads because if they raise their heads above the ground, that's where the bullets are. And helmets are not 100% proof against bullets. So preparedness is a rhythm. Preparedness isn't a file. It's not the red file, the major incident plan on the top shelf of in the emergency department. Preparedness is a flow. The plan gets you ready once. Rhythm keeps you ready always. If you want to build this rhythm in your own teams, let's talk, because compliance is obligation and protection. It's protection, and protection starts with your presence.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Rusty. There's lots of good and sage advice there. Keep the questions coming through because Rusty can see them. Um, Rusty, if you let's take an experienced person or someone old like me and Phil Coburn. I have to keep digging at it. Or a newly qualified paramedic,
Yeah,
what's your advice to them? Because they're very different levels of experience.
yeah,
Both can suffer freeze.
100%.
So
Yeah,
breathe will work for both, but to get out of that breathing and out of the freeze into doing something, be that an action, be that an instruction, what's your advice from moving from that freeze, having breathed, to then move forward? It's easier when you've been there before. Let's start with an NQP.
yeah, yeah. There's a huge amount of work around this. If you lean into the military literature, people will tell you that the training kicked in, and increasingly we hear this now with, and I work with armed firing officers, preparing them for the Day of Days. Obviously, we had one here in Manchester last week. Um, and it is the training. It's because things have become a drill. So there will be things in your life that have become a drill. Breathing is something you've been doing since the moment you were born. So breathing is a drill. So you can lean into breathing, and that's the first. It's the easiest. It's the most accessible. It's why breath control is a part of so many spiritual traditions in terms of doing work and to create awareness, because it's that first step. So that freeze is, even if all you're doing by breathing is becoming aware that you have frozen, and then you just let your training kick in. So whatever your training is, so whether you're a brand new paramedic, brand new paramedics will be competent at doing BLS. They will be competent at asking for help. They will be competent at various things, and they do what their competence is. And if you are longer in the tooth, and if you have a more extended scope of practice because of your registration and your qualifications and your governance and all of those other good things that create safe assurance for people to do advanced practice, then you will train and you do what you are comfortable with there. Um, I was I'm no longer registered, but I was an advanced clinical practitioner for a number of years. But when I got overwhelmed, I quite quickly became that band five paramedic that I was in Bradford in the early noughties. In fact, even beyond that, the band four technician, and even before I was there before Agenda for Change. So you will just be aware that you will go back to your comfort zone. And actually, if you're frozen, going back to your comfort zone, if that's the first thing to get you out of being frozen, that then unlocks your ability to do other things. So, in other words, you breathe, and if you realize when breathing you are frozen, you just move, you do something. It doesn't matter what. There's going to be an overwhelming amount of things to be done. You just do something, and then you do something else, and then you do something else. And
Yeah.
then you're in the habit of moving and doing, and you're doing that iterative loop and iterative performance. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. I have to say that I deliberately avoided saying something specific to do because it is literally do something. Once you've done that first thing, the rest then follows, doesn't it?
Correct.
And
Absolutely.
there's a lot of love for pointing out the hospitals are venues, I've noticed on here.
Oh
Everybody's
yeah.
kind of going, oh yeah, they
It's
are.
it's an
Um,
inconvenient truth, I'm afraid. They're going to have to
absolutely.
start spending some money on
Absolutely.
on plans.
There are going to be there are going to be some EPRR officers getting awkward conversations tomorrow morning, I suspect,
Well,
around that. There's a lot of people talking about using breathing and how it helps them. There's people saying that their trusts use ethane as a form of handover.
good, good.
Ethane, SBAR, all good tools for a framework when you're not sure what to say, aren't they, Austin?
Yeah, can I just talk about SBAR for a second?
Go for
Because
it.
in the ambulance service, there's this kind of almost dogma now around ATMIST, which was developed and enhanced greatly during the Afghanistan and Iraq conflicts, where ATMIS was used as the pre-alerts. It then became there was an awful lot of flow of knowledge from the military to civilian practice in the noughties and the teens. Coming back, especially from Afghanistan, because of work of Professor Keith Porter, General Tim, and those daily calls that they had from Selly Oak and latterly the QE, but Selly Oak, and then going back into theatre, back to the Bastion Hospital, where they gave them feedback, and they had this learning loop because were telling the surgeons that had done the damage control surgery the day before. And bear in mind that most of the those that were injured in combat were in Selly Oak within 24 hours of point of injury, which is a remarkable feat in its own right. But those surgeons and those emergency physicians that had made those, and the intensivists that had made those decisions in theatre, were finding out what happened to those cases 2, 3, 4, 6 beyond days beyond, how much they were having to debride wounds, for example, especially in the latter stages of Afghanistan, because the IEDs were intentionally contaminated, and they were very conservative in their debridement initially because they're wanting to, of course, to save as much viable tissue as possible. But because they were doing that, they were actually leaving some really nasty antibiotic resistant bugs in the system, and actually some fungi as well. All of this is in the public domain. I'm not breaching anything that hasn't already been spoken out at many conferences. So that iterative approach, yeah.
Yeah, and what you're talking about there is what a manufacturer would call rapid prototyping,
Yeah,
where
so
you do
SBAR is
something and get information back and then build that
absolutely
again.
fail fast, fail quick. It's a very important business principle. It's not something in healthcare we like to hear, fail fast, but you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
SBAR was came around in the same era. It had a certain amount of stigma because it came from the Americans. It had even more stigma because it came from the Navy, and it had a particularly high level of stigma because it came from the Navy SEALs, and it was one Navy SEAL that decided he was going to create this. And the thing I really love about SBAR is two things. Firstly, the emergency departments speak SBAR fluently. So why the hell are the paramedics speaking ATMIST?
Mm.
You're communicating with your audience. If you know ATMIST, that's great. But if they speak SBAR, why are we speaking ATMIST? The other thing that's brilliant about SBAR is it leans into the principles of primacy and latency. So many of you who have been paying some attention to this talk, you will have remembered probably one of the first things you've heard, and you'll have remembered one of the last things you heard. Primacy, first thing; latency, the latest thing. So if you apply that to SBAR, you get the situation, which is your headline, what's wrong, and then the R, the recommendation of what you now need to do. That's pretty good for me. And if you don't remember the B and the A in the middle, don't worry, you can find that out downstream. But the headline and then what needs to happen next, those are pretty good pieces of information to do in a handover. Remember, handover is the most unsafe thing we do in healthcare. It's the greatest risk at point of handover. That's where the maximum number of errors, if you do root cause analysis on errors, that's where the maximum number of errors are found to start from, is in that handover.
I've got Imogen's point out SBAR is one of the first handovers that she learned as a first year power. I'm glad to hear
Nice
that
one,
coming
Imogen.
through. We put
Keep
that
sticking at it.
specifically
Stick at it.
we put that specifically into JR Calc because it's become a standard throughout healthcare.
Yeah, I love it. Yes, with D, with the decision.
Yeah.
Dave, the problem with D, and I'm not a massive fan of the D, is you're telling somebody else. So that I love recommendation. I'm not sure about decision. And I know it's interpreted different ways in terms of this is my decision or this is the decision I want you to make. I understand that. Again, I just think headline, what's gone wrong? What would I like you to, what recommendation am I asking you to do about it? That's enough. We don't need to be telling people to make decisions. Emergency physicians in particular are decision-making machines.
I was going to throw a slight different in there, Rusty. What decision I want the person I'm speaking to make to tell me. But it can be taken two ways.
Yeah, that's right.
I agree with you. I don't like the D. I'm purist.
But that's not a handover. That's a conversation. That's a reach back. That's a reach back for advice. And we use in the military, we use reach back a lot, and we use a different template for that. Lucy. Thanks, Lucy. Yeah. So the S in SBAR, it's the headline. It's that attention grabber. It's the thing that's going to get the attention. Listing off 5 sets of serial systolic blood pressures add almost no value to that patient's journey, not least because in an emergency department, from a pre-hospital team to an emergency department handover, within about 30 seconds of you dropping the patient off, they've done about 50,000 more sets of obs than you did in the 2 hours you were with the patient. So what their blood pressure was before is less important than this person is actively trying to die from an internal bleed. Hit them with the headline and don't worry about making it overly emotive. We're now all aware we live in the attention economy. Grab their attention. grab the attention of the people around that bed when you first hand them over. And it's the same when you're going from downstairs, when you're going to from the front door from the emergency department and you're going upstairs. Grab the attention of the intensivists. This is an interesting one. We want you to lean into this. This story is worth listening to. Get that headline. Some of the best writers in the world work for the Sun because they communicate a huge amount of information in 2, 3, or 4, 5 words in a headline. And the way they do it is grammatically incorrect, but oh my God, it's effective. And it's also effective when people perhaps aren't at their best. So we have this thing about wanting to talk and speak and be erudite and use PhD words. Actually, when people are stressed or tired or fatigued, and that's most of the NHS most of the time, let's keep it simple. Simple is actually harder. It's harder to work for the Sun and be a newspaper writer for the Sun than it is for the Telegraph or the Times. The Sun authors are only allowed to use 400 words. They have a dictionary of 400 words they're allowed to use.
So there's a discussion going on around between the difference between pre-alert and handover. Do you want to
Yeah,
say a
there is a
little bit about
difference. There is a difference. So I think the difference is depends on the system. So there are some systems that when you pre-alert, they say thank you and they wait till you arrive. And there are some systems that take the pre-alert very seriously. I think whether you're using AtMist or SBAR, in fact, there is evidence for this. It doesn't matter actually whether you use AtMist or SBAR or Ash Ice or Sample or any of the other handover tools, and there are others available. What matters more is that you're using them and you're using the one that the person you're speaking to understands. So you speak their language. Don't speak yours, speak theirs. And if you're not sure what language they speak, ask.
And around that, I'm just going back to a comment from Lucy Hutton. Having an idea of self-awareness as an individual and communicating that to your colleagues is so helpful. What do they do when they are maxed out? If I go quiet, I'm maxed. My colleagues know this about me. It can
Yeah.
help team dynamics. Do you want to talk about how to spot when your message isn't going through?
Yeah. So, and Lucy and I are the same. And I had some regular workmates when I was on ambulances, and they'd always say they always knew when the patient was really, really poorly because I would go quiet, and it was because I was because I'm actually an introvert, and I'd internalize and I'd process, and they knew that whatever came out next was going to be something that was hopefully worth listening to. Yeah, so how do you recognize when you've lost that? So when you first walk into a room in whatever uniform, green, blue, red, whatever, and yes, I identify as someone that wore an orange knob suit for a while, so I get to be rude about people that wear orange and red knob suits because I've been that person. Whatever you've got a moment of attention, you've got their attention, and we understand this now because we understand that people doom scroll on Instagram and they go onto Instagram and then 45 minutes later they look up and realize, well, oh look, it's gone dark. So you've got their attention. You know you've lost them when they're not listening to you. Eye contact. So when you're doing a handover, and I would recommend this very, very strongly for people in Lucy's position doing critical care, if you're taking someone into resus, don't try and hand over to the entire team. You are handing over to the team leader only. The team leader will have already briefed their team as to whether or not they want concurrent activity during the handover or whether or not they want a silent cockpit moment and they want everyone to go quiet and everyone to listen to the handover. Well, here's a clue. If the team leader tells everyone to listen to the handover, the majority of people are not listening to the handover. They're just not doing anything. Because what they're doing is they're waiting for the handover to finish so they can get on with the task that they've been given, A, B, C, D, whatever. They're waiting for permission, in other words, silence, for them to get on with their task. And they are holding in their minds attention of what is their next task. It's like a sprinter at the start of the 100-meter finals. They're there, and all they're waiting for is the B of bang to start sprinting. And the majority of those team members in those teams will not be listening to the handover. They will be listening that it's happened. They will not be listening to the detail. So the person whose attention you need to grab and hold is the team leader, the person receiving the handover. And if you've got an anaesthetist at the head end, they can multitask and they will be listening as well because they're awesome and that's brilliant. But fundamentally, the person you're communicating with is the team leader. So make sure you get their attention, speak to them, try and use their name. If they've got a name badge on, go, hi Dushi, my name's Rusty. I'm here to hand over this patient to you. It's now a good time. And check when are you ready to receive? When are you going to be in listening mode? Yeah. So all of these are the things that you do. And then at the point where they've glazed over, and the bottom line is they will remember three pieces of information at best. And if you start off with their name and their age, you've already burnt through two pieces of information. So use a structure. Don't give them serial blood pressures. Don't tell them what the blood sugar was, especially if it's not relevant. Give them the relevant, pertinent information and keep it precise. And then, in order to learn how to get better, because this won't be the last handover you do, listen to the first question they ask you back, because that was the piece of information they wanted in your handover that you didn't give them. And if you start to notice a pattern in your handovers that they're always asking this one question, start including that in your handover. And this is how you iterate and improve with your handovers, because handover isn't just a case of using an S-bar. It's you're choosing, your nuance is choosing what goes in and what doesn't go in, and listen to the questions go asked. For example, when I started out in Bradford back in the day, and we were taking in patients with chest pain, the primary question that the physicians in Bradford Royal Resus were asking us is, when did the pain start? And at the time, it wasn't a question that we were asking the patients. So we learnt to ask that question, when did the pain start? Because we knew that call to needle time was a thing. And that was the phrase in those days, call to needle time, to get the patient to the definitive care because they were going to be thrombolized. Uh, uh, we knew that call to needle time was urgent, but what we didn't know is there was a number of hours at which point thrombolysis became not relevant. And so we found out what that information was, and that then changed our behavior on scene. And of course, a lot of this is now in common practice, and most of you are thinking, what you mean you didn't ask them when the pain started? Of course you asked what time the pain started. Everyone does. But 20 years ago, it wasn't normal practice. It is now, thankfully, because as a profession, we're a lot better than we were when I started.
And it's good. That's an important point to talk to the team leader, because as you said before, handover is conversation. It's not a broadcast, is it? I've got two little bits to finish up with. There's some of the guys that are just starting on their career, that are talking about asking questions and how it's really important, if you're not sure, to ask. Have you got any advice for those just starting out on in those pressure situations? I mean, looking back to when we were treating dinosaurs when I started, and thinking about
You and me
there's so
both, bro.
much going on, there's so much going on,
Yeah,
and you're like, I need to do something, but I just want to ask a question.
yeah,
How do you get that question out? How do you get
yeah,
that
yeah.
get that question out as someone who feels like the lowest rank? How do you do that?
So being the lowest rank is actually a bit of a gift in this instance, because you're the lowest rank. And if you are a newbie or a trainee or an NQP or whatever, you get to ask the question because you're in training. So ask the question. There is no such thing as a stupid question. You may get a stupid answer if you're asking a question of an Egypt, but there's no such thing as a stupid question. If it's a question in your mind, it's likely a question in the mind of others as well. So absolutely ask the question. The harder person to answer that question for would be the likes of you, me, and Lucy, who have been on the game for a while and have an expectation that we know everything. So I often ask questions. I model question asking behavior, even when I don't actually need to know the answers. So I model the behavior of asking questions in front of my team so that they're accustomed to the fact that I ask questions, so that when they've got a question, they feel able to ask it. And this is where we're starting to talk into this rhythm of these behaviors again and again and again. And we're modeling good behaviors. So those of us who are senior and advanced and whatever title that we run around with, for those of us that are slightly longer in the tooth, have got more than 5 minutes experience in whatever environment you find yourself in, who are considered to be at least competent, if not experts, ask questions. Everybody get into the habit of asking a lot of questions a lot of the time, and we'll normalize the idea that we're in a learning culture, not a blame culture, and it's okay to not know. It's also okay to have temporarily forgotten. I'm overwhelmed with this other thing over here, and I've just forgotten what is the dose of X. It's okay to ask the question. What's not okay is making the mistake. And it's definitely not okay to make the mistake more than once. So, and yes, mistakes happen. So we fess up to them and we do learning. But this is how we create this learning culture, is by asking questions and then listening to the answers and valuing the answers and then creating those boundaries for the plan and that framework and then go, right, let's do it. And then we iterate and we rhythm and we go into that repeat mode.
And I don't know about you, Rusty, but certainly some of the best people that I've learned from when giving instructions used to say, "Do this because," and I've modelled
Oh, yeah.
myself on that. Do this because
Start with the why.
the team will follow you if they know why they're doing it and what the goal is and the aim is. Do you want to just talk about for the people that are here that are leaders, how to bring people along with you in those really tight situations
Yeah.
where focus may be blurred, where they may be not listening all the time and maybe maxed out. How do you as a leader get through to your team that is maxed out?
This is a real challenge in the emergency and the pre-hospital services environment, because the default answer to that question is know your team. But if you're working with a flash team that's never come together before, if Lucy's just stepped off the aircraft and she's in a town in Scotland she's never been to before, she knows nobody. Now, that said, Lucy knows everybody. So, but how well does Lucy know? How well is Lucy able to? And sorry, Lucy, I'm using your name.
I was about to say sorry,
It's
Lucy.
because I love you. And also you're an amazing clinician. Um, how do you recognize in others that they've gone quiet, or they are shut down, or they are in the frozen mode, or they are even worse, they're about to flee, because that also happens. Um, so um, so unless you know your team individually, you have to start looking for the more general clues. So their body language will change. They will slump down. They will go quiet. They won't look at you in the eye. If someone's holding eye contact with you, they're probably not your biggest problem, unless they're being an abrasive, um, a-hole, and they're kind of going at you aggressively. But if someone's listening and they've got eye contact with you, and then someone stood next to them that hasn't asked a question and isn't taking notes or doesn't appear to be paying attention or literally looks terrified, we are hardwired to have these empathetic responses and understanding of other people. So look for the behaviors that are out of place. And then all you do is you simply, very gently, ask confirmatory questions. And you go, hey, listen, I've just given you this brief. I'm going to go and do some primary triage. And when am I asking you to come back? Because that is going to be a key piece of information. And see what kind of response you get back. See whether or not they respond at all. So this is how you learn, and it's nuance. And this is soft skills. And this isn't in any textbook that you can find with the word paramedic medicine written on the front end of. It's soft skills. It's reading people. And it's a nuance. And leadership is a competence in its own right. So I'm going to go on a little bit of a soapbox here, that in an awful lot of, especially the Royal Medical Colleges syllabuses, they will have sections on leadership. But if you then look and you unpeel the layers of those onions as to what those, especially medics, need to do in order to achieve those leadership competencies, I'm really sorry, it's lip service. Because leadership is as important a competence in healthcare as being able to do a blood pressure.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
it's not something that is taught. Now, I am about as privileged as I can be, apart from being male, pale, and stale and all of that stuff. In terms of leadership, I was sent for 12 months to the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst, where for 12 months I just learned to practice, not learn. It wasn't didn't get PhDs. We learned to practice at low level leadership. And then I got posted to a unit where for 2 years I got to put that into practice with real soldiers as opposed to other officer cadets, where I learned. And standing over my shoulder, there was a very old, crusty sergeant who every single time I made a mistake, which is 4 or 5 times an hour, would just clip me around the head. And it was the 90s that was allowed in those days. Okay, so that leadership embedding of just and how important it is and how central it is to everything that gets done in the military, absolutely hardwired into that system, It's not hardwiring to health, which is why we have many of the leadership and management issues that we do. So this is something that we all need to be ready for. And also, here's the clue: by the time you get to band 7 and band 8, if you haven't already become a leader, it's already too late. So you better start learning your leadership at the point where you're band 4 and band 5 and a student. And if all that means is you're leading yourself, that's great. Learn to lead yourself and then apply that to others.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rusty. We've just run out of time now, and I think half of that was Q&A and discussion. So I'm really, really pleased with the engagement from everybody. There's been a huge amount of love for the session, Rusty. So thank you so much
Pleasure.
for doing that. It's given people that are experienced and inexperienced quite a lot to think about. A lot of good advice there. And we're very, very grateful to you for joining us and for helping us along this journey. Thank you all to all of those people that have joined us for this evening. It's heartening to see so many people back at the first webinar that we've had after our little break. Tom, could you pop that slide up, please? So just finally, if you're not a trauma care member already, it's not much to join us. You'll get access to the many webinars that we've had over the years, you discounts to the conference, and many other useful benefits along with the journal. If you have a look on the website, we'll leave that QR code up so you can scan and join. And we'd love to see you engage with us all more. Just finally, one more time, thank you to Tom also for running the IT and for the recovery after we had a little glitch just after I said we were doing so well, guaranteed. And Rusty, once again, thank you so much for kicking us off on our new journey as we return to these webinars. Thank you, everybody.